Hello, dear friend. Welcome to Healing Pages channel, the safe haven where every page you turn brings you gently back to yourself. Are you living the life others expect of you, or the life you truly long for? Do you smile every day, play your part just right, do all the right things, yet deep down, feel like you're acting in a play whose ending you don't quite understand? We grow up in a world that praises those who adapt well, who stay agreeable, who sacrifice for others, but it rarely teaches us how to truly listen to ourselves, to understand our inner voice, to live in alignment with the wild, beating truth inside us. That's why Untamed has touched the hearts of millions. Because it doesn't try to teach you how to live. It simply reminds you. You don't need to be tamed in order to be loved. You deserve a life that's free, honest, radiant, even if it doesn't look like anyone else's version of perfect. Sometimes, we don't need someone to save us. We just need a sentence at the right time. A pause. A book that quietly asks, who are you really living for? And if you're in that kind of quiet moment right now, Untamed may be exactly the gift your soul has been waiting for. Glennon Doyle doesn't write from theory. She writes from her own raw, real life, a life that shattered, shifted, and had to unlearn what it meant to be tamed into someone she no longer recognized. She's a mother, a social justice warrior, a woman who once struggled with addiction, with eating disorders, with a socially acceptable marriage that drained her spirit to the bone. And then, she stopped. She began to question. She began to write down the truths her heart could no longer silence. From those words, Untamed was born, like a beam of light through darkness, a declaration of inner freedom. There's a moment in the book where she writes, I knew how to be desired, but I didn't know what I desired. I knew how to be wanted, but I didn't know what I truly wanted. When I read that, I stopped. Because how many of us have lived just like that? We know how to be likable, but we don't know how to love ourselves. And that's why Untamed isn't just for women. It's for anyone who's ever felt consumed by expectation, duty, or someone else's version of right and wrong. It's for you, whether you're in your radiant 20s or your weary 30s, whether you're a mother, a father, someone chasing their dream job, or someone who just let everything go to start fresh. Untamed isn't just another self-help guide. It's not just a memoir. It's an invitation. A gentle but firm whisper. Stop living someone else's story. Come back to the wild, honest, luminous version of you. This is the book you read when you've been good for too long. When your soul aches to be wild, not reckless, but free. Free to be whole, to be real, to be fully yourself. The book unfolds in 3 parts: caged, keys and freedom, like stepping stones across an inner transformation. From being trapped in invisible rules, to finding the courage to break them, and finally live, fully, fiercely, truthfully. In the next parts, I'll walk you through each section of this powerful book. From the story of the cheetah in captivity to Glennon's journey of breaking free from her own invisible cage. So stay with me. And if it feels right, let this book be your next companion on the path to healing. Part 1. Caged. The first part of the book is titled Caged. It's a word that might sound distant at first, but the more you read, the more you realize how close it really is. Because caged is something so many of us, especially women, have experienced, whether we could name it or not. In this section, Glennon tells the story of a cheetah raised in captivity. It no longer hunts with wild power. It has become tame, trained to bow, to perform, to run only when cued, and only within invisible boundaries it was never allowed to question. And then Glennon saw it. The cheetah was her. It was us. It was everyone who's ever been taught how to live, how to think, how to love, how to sacrifice, but was never taught how to listen to the voice within. She shares that her taming began at the age of 11, the age when the first rules about being a girl began to shape her mind. She learned that, to be loved, she had to be thin. To be soft, gentle, agreeable. She learned to suppress her emotions. To smile when she didn't mean it. To put others first, always. Bit by bit, she traded her inner freedom for outer approval. Glennon began saying the things people wanted to hear, doing the things that kept her acceptable. She laughed on cue. She stayed silent in chaos. And when the silence became too much to bear, she turned to extremes: addiction, disordered eating, self-punishment, just to feel something that felt real. But society didn't call that pain. It called it growing up. And so she kept living like the trained cheetah, running when told, pleasing when expected, never once asking, "Is there another way I could live?" She writes, "Every woman is born a wild cheetah, but piece by piece, the world tells her to sit still, be good, and calls it love, calls it sacrifice, maturity, rightness." Sound familiar? We were told, girls should behave. Mothers should give in. A wife should know how to hold her man. All these ideas, dressed up as values, became the invisible bars of a cage. A cage that locked away something sacred, our wild, authentic freedom. Reading this part of the book stirred something quiet but powerful in me. Because it wasn't just Glennon. So many of us, men and women, have been living as the tamed versions of ourselves. Versions molded to be lovable, acceptable, peaceful, but in doing so, we lose the truth and wildness of who we are. Glennon doesn't blame anyone. She doesn't point fingers at parents, culture, or the past. She simply reveals a truth we've all felt. That we cannot live a full, radiant life if we keep trying to be what others expect of us. And I believe, if you've ever felt boxed in, shaped into a role you never chose, then Caged will resonate deeply with you. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but quietly, slowly, like someone finally whispering the very name of your long-held ache. Part 2. The Key. The moment the author asked herself, "What if I don't have to live this way forever?" that was when the first door quietly opened. Part 2 of the book is called The Key, and it marks Glennon's journey inward. The moment she chose to search for the voice she had long silenced, and to finally reach out and take hold of the key that had always been within her grasp. Not some distant miracle, not something given by the world, but her own truth, waiting to be held. After years of performing roles written by society, of being the good girl, the patient wife, the pleasing woman, she started listening not just to her thoughts, but to her body, her emotions, her persistent anger, her quiet sadness, and all those vague longings she used to brush away. She stopped dismissing her feelings. She began to ask questions. Not the grand, philosophical kind, but simple, honest questions that cut through the noise. What makes me feel light? When do I feel most real? Is this truly my decision, or someone else's expectation? She called it the art of turning inward, a sacred practice of sitting with yourself, without judgment, without rushing to fix, just being there long enough to hear what's true. She wrote, "When we feel, our inner world begins to transform. When we become aware and imagine, our outer world shifts. When we live in alignment with our inner life, the world around us starts to change." And that's the thing. The key was never out there. Not in a book. Not in advice. Not in the endless stream of 10 steps to happiness on social media. The key is in the quiet knowing of what feels true, and the courage to walk toward it, even if the crowd doesn't cheer. In this section, Glennon shares the moment she realized she no longer loved her husband. And what shocked her wasn't the fact that she wanted to leave, but that it took her so long to admit it to herself. She began to listen to her intuition, that quiet, tender voice inside that kept whispering, "This isn't right. This isn't you." That voice didn't shout. It didn't rage. It simply persisted. And that persistence, that quiet knowing, was the key that unlocked her cage. Reading this, I felt a gentle ache in my chest. Because so many times in my life, I've known what was right for me. But I stayed silent. Out of fear. Out of the need to be liked. Out of the belief that maybe I didn't deserve more. I thought I was being patient. I thought I was being selfless. But in truth, I was slowly disappearing. One small silence at a time. Glennon doesn't offer a one-size-fits-all answer. She simply tells her truth. What she felt. What she faced. What she chose. And in doing that, she invites us to begin our own quiet search. To find our key. In our own way. In our own time. To me, the key felt like a pause. A space where you're allowed to put everything down, every role, every rule, every expectation that says you must. And what's left is just you. Real, honest, listening, finally, to your own voice. Part 3, Freedom. If caged was the moment we realized the bars, if the key was when we reached out and touched the lock, then freedom is the quiet, trembling moment when the door opens, and we step outside, slowly, cautiously, breathing just a little deeper, with a heart that's still shaking, but full of longing. To Glennon, freedom isn't about perfection. It's not some flawless state of endless happiness. It's about truth. It's about being able to feel everything, all the joy, all the sorrow, all the hunger, without needing to justify any of it. It's about saying no without guilt. About being loved, not because you're perfect, but because you dared to be honest. In this section, she doesn't just recount the ending of her old marriage. She tells the story of her rebirth, this time, with clarity, intention, and the courage to come home to herself. She faced judgment, resistance, the disapproval of loved ones, friends, the world around her. But the greater fear wasn't being rejected by others. It was losing her connection with herself. Waking up every morning having to whisper, "Just hold on. Just make it through the day." Then, she met the woman who woke her heart. Not in some dramatic, cinematic way, but in the quiet way that real love works. When you see someone shining with a light you'd forgotten you once had, and suddenly, you begin remembering how to find it again. And Glennon chose to live her truth. Not to inspire anyone. Not to rebel. Not to prove a point. Simply because the time had come to stop abandoning herself. She writes, "My entire past lives inside me, holding me up, helping me move. So deep that no one can see it. It seeps into every branch of me, reaching far beyond what anyone else will know. They stretch toward light, toward warmth. And in the middle, the trunk, the only part of me visible to the world. Strong enough to protect me, soft enough to contain me, clear and safe." I paused at that part. Because maybe we all carry a tree like that inside us. A trunk that once cracked, once dried out, once buried in the dark. But with the smallest light, truth, love, courage, it dares to grow again. In this chapter, she also writes deeply about love. Not the romanticized, fairy tale kind, but a love rooted in awareness, in self-respect, a love that refuses to wound oneself just to keep someone else comfortable. She fell in love with a woman. But the most beautiful part wasn't just who she loved. It was that she learned to love herself before trying to belong to anyone else. Freedom isn't the end of the journey. It's a beginning. It's where she begins to live as her truest self, writing books, raising her kids, loving and being loved. No longer trying to be ideal, but simply growing, every day, a little more. To me, freedom isn't some grand, unreachable thing anymore. Sometimes, it's just waking up and choosing how to spend your morning. It's saying no to something that feels wrong. It's daring to speak your truth. It's no longer asking for permission to live as yourself. This book isn't just one woman's journey toward truth. It's an invitation. A gentle awakening. A call to all of us, the restless souls navigating this modern, chaotic world, searching for connection among the fragments, longing for a space where we can finally Simply, be ourselves. The author brings the most essential truth. We are not alone. And we were never meant to heal alone. We don't need to fix each other. We just need to stand beside one another, as we each learn how to live truthfully and love honestly. After everything she's endured, from the invisible cage of expectation, to the quiet reclaiming of her voice, to the brave step into freedom, Glennon comes to a tender realization. When we dare to live our truth, we not only save ourselves, we become a spark for others to do the same, because freedom is never just a solo journey. Each person who chooses honesty over performance, who dares to stop pretending, becomes part of a quiet revolution, one where we no longer need to be tamed or perfect or polished according to someone else's definition. She speaks of community, of love between people. Not the soft focus romance we're sold in stories, but a kind of love that is raw and real, one that doesn't avoid differences, doesn't cover up the pain, but shows up fully, with presence and truth. She writes that maybe it's time to stop teaching each other how to be the right kind of woman, the ideal man, the selfless mother, the strong father, and instead, begin teaching one another how to be whole human beings. Fragile yet powerful, messy yet beautiful, imperfect but learning to love ourselves more each day. If we all lived fully, stood tall, and let our inner light shine, the world would be so radiant, we wouldn't recognize it as the same place we once called home. I read that line again and again, because it's not just poetic, it's a real, beating hope. That maybe, if each of us were a little braver, a little more honest, a little more kind to ourselves, the world would begin to change. Bit by bit. From the inside out. This part reminded me. Untamed doesn't end on a final page. The story continues, in the choice you made this morning. In the moment you choose to be honest about how you feel. In the pause where you ask yourself, is this truly me? Because when you live in truth, you contribute to healing the whole. When you stop pretending, you give others permission to show up as they are. When you embrace your contradictions, and love yourself anyway, you create a safe place, not just for yourself, but for everyone who walks beside you. That, to me, is the most beautiful gift of this book. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand transformation. It simply whispers. You have always been you. A radiant, strong, honest version of yourself, worthy of living a life full of light. And if you ever forget that, let this book remind you. Once. Then again. And again. We often imagine freedom as something distant, something grand, something reserved only for the strong. But after reading Untamed, I've come to see that freedom begins in much smaller places. It begins the moment we choose to be honest with ourselves. When we stop living to please others. When we finally stop saying yes to the things that make our hearts ache. This book never tries to teach you how to become someone else. It simply whispers, gently but clearly, that you don't have to become anything. You just need to come home to yourself. And if today, you feel lost, if you're tired of playing roles that no longer fit, if you're asking yourself, who am I in all of this? Then maybe this book can be a companion. A soft light. A quiet pause that lets you begin again. This time, for you. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this journey. If you believe this book deserves to reach more people, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, so we can continue sharing more healing stories, one page at a time. You're also invited to leave a comment below. Maybe a quote that stayed with you. A moment in this video that made you pause and reflect, or simply a message to say, I'm okay. And I'm starting to live more truthfully. I'll see you again in the next book, where we'll slow down together, breathe a little deeper, and return to ourselves, page by page, word by word, breath by breath.